Boom. 54. Keep your agreements. To me, this just sounds like a lot like honesty and being legit. So let's get into it. Keep your agreements. Your life works to the degree you keep your agreements. Werner Erhard, founder of the Establishment Training and Landmark Forum. Interesting. I don't actually know that guy. I feel like I should read more because I know Landmark's really good education. Never promise more than you can perform. Publilius Cyrus. It used to be that one's word was one's bond. Agreements were made and kept with a minimum of fanfare. People thought carefully about whether they could deliver on their promises before agreeing to anything. It was that important. Today, keeping one's agreements seems to be a hit or miss affair. The high cost of not keeping your agreements. In my seminars, I asked participants to agree to a list of 15 ground rules that include things like being on time, sitting in a different chair after every break, and no alcoholic beverages until after the training is over. If they will agree to play by the ground rules, I do not allow. If they will not agree to play by the ground rules, I do not allow them to take the training. I even have them sign a form in their workbook that says, I agree to keep all these guidelines and ground rules. On the morning of the third day, I ask everyone who has broken one of the ground rules to stand up. We then look at what we can learn from the experience. What becomes apparent is how casually we give our word, and then how casually we break it. But what's even more interesting is that people know they are going to break at least one of the guidelines before agreeing to them, and yet they agree to them anyway. Why? Most people want to avoid the discomfort of questioning the rules. They don't want to be the focus of attention. They don't want to risk confrontation of any kind. Others want to take the training without really following the rules. So they appear to agree, but they don't really intend to follow through. The real problem is not that people give and break their word so easily. It's that they don't realize the psychological cost of doing so. When you don't keep your agreements, you pay both external and internal costs. You lose trust, respect, and credibility with others, your family, your friends, your colleagues, and your customers. And you create messes in your own life and in the lives of those who depend on you for getting things done. Whether it's showing up on time to leave for the movies, getting a report done on time, or cleaning the garage. After a few weeks of not following through on your promise to take the kids to the park on the weekend, they begin not to trust you to keep your word. They realize they can't count on you. You lose authority with them. Your relationship deteriorates. So true. Every agreement you make is with yourself. More importantly, every agreement you make is ultimately with yourself. Even when you are making an agreement with someone else, your brain hears it and registers it as a commitment. You're making an agreement with yourself to do something. And when you don't follow through, you learn to distrust yourself. The result is a loss of self-esteem, self-confidence, and self-respect. You lose faith in your ability to produce a result. You weaken your sense of integrity. Let's say that you tell your spouse you're going to get up at 6:30 in the morning and do some exercise before going to work. But after 3 days of hitting the snooze alarm, your brain knows better than to trust you. Of course, you may think sleeping late is no big deal, but to your unconscious, it is a very big deal. When you don't do what you say you will, you create confusion and self-doubt. You undermine your sense of personal power. It's not worth it. Your integrity and self-esteem are worth more than $1 million. When you realize how important your integrity and self-esteem really are, you will stop making casual agreements just to get someone off your back. You won't sell your self-esteem for a little bit of momentary approval. You won't make agreements you don't intend to keep. You will make fewer agreements and you will do whatever it takes to keep them. I think that's really key. Make fewer agreements. Only agree to what you actually can do. There's just absolutely no point saying that you're going to do stuff and you won't, because it benefits no one. Like, there's absolutely no benefit there. To illustrate this in my seminars, I ask attendees, if you knew you would get $1 million if you made it to the end of a seminar without breaking one ground rule, could you have done it? Most agree that they could. Often there is still one holdout that says, no way, I just couldn't do it. I'm not responsible for the traffic jam I encountered on the way to the seminar this morning, or how am I supposed to be on time when my ride was late picking me up? Then I ask, what if the person whom you love the most in the world would have to die if you didn't keep all the ground rules for the training? Would you have done anything differently then? Now the person who says the traffic made them late finally gets it and acknowledges, oh yes, if my son's life were at stake, I wouldn't even have left this room. There you go. I would have slept on the floor in the conference room rather than take the risk of being late. Once you realize how important keeping your word is, you realize you have the ability to do it. It's simply a matter of realizing what you are giving up. The personal power that you get from keeping your agreements is worth a whole lot more than $1 million. If you want more self-esteem, self-confidence, self-respect, personal power, mental clarity, and energy, then you'll make keeping your word more important. If you want to have the respect and trust of others, which is critical to accomplishing anything big and important in life, including making $1 million, then you will take keeping your agreements more seriously. Some tips on making and keeping agreements. Here are some tips on making fewer agreements and for keeping the ones you make. Make only agreements that you intend to keep. Take a few seconds before making an agreement to see if it is really what you want to do. Check in with yourself. How does your body feel about it? Don't make an agreement just because you are looking for someone's approval. If you do, you'll find yourself breaking these commitments. Write down all the agreements you make. Use a calendar, daily planning book, notebook, or computer to record all of your agreements. In the course of a week, you might enter into dozens of agreements. One of the big reasons we don't keep our agreements is that with the daily press of all of our activities, we forget many of the agreements that we have made. Write them down, then review your list every day. As I have stated before, a new finding from brain research is that when we don't write something down or make some effort to store it in long-term memory, the memory can be lost in as little as 37 seconds. You may have great intentions, but if you forget to do what you agreed to do, the result is the same as choosing not to keep your agreements. Communicate any broken agreement at the first appropriate time. As soon as you know you are going to have a broken agreement, your car won't start, you're caught in traffic, your child is sick, baby can't make you, computer crashes, notify the person as soon as possible and then renegotiate the agreement. This demonstrates respect for others' time and their needs. It also gives them time to reschedule, replan, make other arrangements, and limit any potential damage. If the first appropriate time is after the fact, still let them know that you have a broken agreement. Clean up any consequences and decide whether to recommit to the agreement. Learn to say no more often. Give yourself time to think it over before making any new agreements. I write the word no in yellow highlighter on all my calendar pages as a way to remind myself to really consider what else I'll have to give up if I say yes to something new. It makes me pause and think before I add another commitment to my life. The rules of the game. Do you know what? I had something yesterday. I had lunch arranged with a mate, and we planned it and scheduled it ages ago. I wasn't going to do it because I had other things that I wanted to do instead. He was like, yeah, no, we're all good. And I was like, let's go, let's do it. The one thing I'm slipping on in that at the moment is the early wake ups. But I probably haven't made a definitive cut the line commitment to saying, yes, you're getting up every single morning. I should do that. I think I will. I'll make the commitment now. So for But then, I'm not going to say something like for the next year, because that's not just going to happen. So for every weekday for the rest of this week, so Thursday, Friday, and next week, I'm going to commit to waking up at 6:30 and have my priming finished by 7. That's good, because if I wake up, do the priming, yeah. Hold on, just let me write that down. 6:30 a.m. and prime done by 7 a.m. Yep, cool. So I'll write that down for every single day. And next week, so what I'm writing on is this is my everyday, what I'm sort of working through, things that I've got to get done. So I plan out my week in advance, but that's sort of my commitment to myself. Yeah, there's another one I don't really care about it, so I haven't committed to it. But I'll get it done. Yeah, just writing things down like that. I may not get everything done that I write down, but I get the vast majority. Most of the time, it's all of it. And doing this over the course of a year, oh man, it will change your life, and you will get more done than you ever thought was possible, just by writing down 3, maybe 5 things a day that you need to get done to move you towards your goals, which is all this stuff on the walls. I've got more over here, my goals and all that. So I'm very clear on what I want to do and what's most important. All right. Communicate any broken agreement at first appropriate time. As soon as you know you are going to have a broken agreement, your car won't start, you're caught in traffic, your child is sick, your babysitter can't make it, your computer crashes, notify the other person as soon as possible, and then renegotiate the agreement. This demonstrates respect for others' time and their needs. It also gives them time to reschedule, replan, make other arrangements, and limit any potential damage. If the first appropriate time is after the fact, still let them know that you have a broken agreement. Clean up any consequences and decide whether to recommit to the agreement. Learn to say no more often. Crucial. Give yourself time to think it over before making any new agreements. I write the word no in yellow highlighter on all my calendar pages as a way to remind myself to really consider what else I'll have to give up if I say yes to something new. Makes me pause and think before I add another commitment to my life. I believe I already read that, but it was obviously important. Rules of the game. One of the most powerful trainings I ever took was called Money and You, created by Marshall Thurber in the late 1970s. Radically changed how I related to money, business, and relationships. Everything that you want to accomplish require relationships with your friends, family, staff, vendors, coaches, bosses, board of directors, clients, customers, partners, associates, students, teachers, audience, fans, and others. For those relationships to work, you need to set up what my friend John Assaraf calls the rules of engagement. With Marshall Thurber, DC, Cordova, and the other folks at accelerated business schools call the rules of the game. Scott Harris says that. How are we going to play together? What are the ground rules and guidelines for the relationship going to be? Marshall taught us the following guidelines, which I've endeavored to live by ever since. If you and all the people you interact with were to agree to the following rules, your level of success would soar. 1. Be willing to support our purpose, values, rules, and goals. 2. Speak with good purpose. If it doesn't serve, don't say it. No making people wrong, justifying, or defending. 3. If you disagree or do not understand, ask clarifying questions. Don't make the other person wrong. 4. Make only agreements you are willing and intend to keep. 5. If you can't keep an agreement, communicate as soon as practical to the appropriate person. Clean up any broken agreement at the first appropriate opportunity. 6. When something is not working, first look to the system for corrections and then propose a system-based solution to the person who can do something about it. 7. Be responsible. No blaming, no defending, no justifying, no shaming. Upping the ante. If If you want to really take it to the max in terms of keeping your commitments to yourself, you can use this technique that my friend Martin Route taught me. Set up consequences. This is so good. I do this all the time. Set up consequences, such as writing a large check to a person or an organization that you don't like, or shaving off all your hair, that are greater than the payoffs, such as the comfort and safety of not having to take a risk you get for not keeping your word. The cost of having to deliver on the consequences is too expensive to not follow through on the commitment. This is where I think a good coach or a good trainer can be very, very useful. Martin used this technique to motivate himself to follow through on his commitment to learn how to dive off a diving board. To make sure that he wouldn't back out of his commitment, he declared to his friends that if he didn't learn to dive by a certain date, he would write a check for $1,000 to the Ku Klux Klan. Being Jewish, Martin was not a big fan of the Klan. Obviously, he didn't want to write that check. That would have been more painful than confronting his fear of diving. So, as challenging as it was for him, Martin learned how to dive. What is so important in your life that you don't want to give yourself an out? Make a public declaration of a consequence that you find painful to pay, and you'll use the power of motivating yourself to take the action that you say you want to take, but that you have been procrastinating. Done. Up to 55. I'm going to read the next couple myself, but to me for the day, I'm on target.